Happy Monday. This is Robert. I'm starting a thing called Mental Health Mondays topics about anything and everything mental health and mental illness related. And before I go into the main part of the topic, I just wanted to do some basic understandings. Just going to change my hand. Uh, some give definitions to some common words, that we hear all the time, but maybe we don't have like a legit, like concrete definition. I think that having that as a basis is really important for wide-ranging understanding. Because we live in a more compassionate time with people with mental illness, but there's always an underlying stigma where people get stereotyped and labeled and negative connotations. It's stuff that people have to deal with when they have mental illness. But as I had said, we also live in a time where more people are compassionate, so they have that to balance it. And I think the important thing to know with stigma is, although, yeah, there may always be people that don't understand mental illness and look at people who struggle with that in a negative light, they always have the capacity to change that. That's not something constant that never changes. Human beings have the capacity to change from very horrible, dastardly people to wonderful people. And human beings also have the ability to change from wonderful to horrible people. We're both good and bad. So it's not that we're one or the other. We like to label people as good or bad, but I'm a human being. I do awesome things, and I also do crappy things. It's just part of being a human being. So I think it's important to know that when you're talking about stigma. So I'm going to start with defining mental health and mental illness. What is mental health? So mental health is essentially, it's kind of like hygiene, but for your mind and your brain, your emotions. Like hygiene, what is hygiene? Hygiene is like brushing your teeth every day, taking care of your body, shaving, having clean clothes, showering every day, keeping yourself clean, keeping your place organized and clean. Just like a healthy living environment. That's hygiene. Mental health is essentially, it's different than that, but your mental health will either contribute to perpetuate that or make it worse. So your mental health is, having like a positive, like high self-esteem is tied into good mental health. Like self-esteem, your inner dialogue in your mind, being able to see real positives in life, and it's about like having a quote unquote clean mind, and being able to have your emotions quote unquote under control. Emotions are very difficult to control, but when they're stable, meaning they're kind of like even keel, that means that you have like good mental health. Now, mental illness it's a wide ranging thing, but mental illness is just basically being either emotionally sick or mentally mentally not well. I'll try to go into more detail with that. Mental illness is essentially, forms of mental illness are depression, anxiety. It could go into a more broader spectrum where it could be like a personality disorder or a diagnosis of something like bipolar. These are all different things that have to tie into mental illness. And what I've been kind of studying for and reading up, because I like to do my homework on this, a lot of mental illness, and what I'm saying is not entirely proven. So this is just my take. So people feel free to disagree with it or feel like it's not true. But a majority of mental illness in life stems from losses that you experience in life, losing loved ones, losing pets, people that you care about. I think that ties into your mental health and your mental illness. It's again, it's something that I've done some homework. I don't know if there's any legitimate statistical research that can prove that, but just that's my observation with my own experiences, talking to other people, watching some YouTube stuff, and then doing like my own reading on different things too. So that's kind of like what mental illness is, and before I go into more of this, I want to preface saying that like although I'm talking about this, I'm far from an expert. I don't know everything there is to know about mental illness. The things that I may suggest in the next thing may not help you, may not be something that is beneficial to you. Mental illness, I think, and mental health are very personal, individualized situations. So it's different than like a medical condition where, like, if you give a medication a lot of times to a medical condition, and I'll say that not all, but there's a larger majority of people that benefit from that medication treatment than with medications with mental illness. It's so individualized, and one medication may work for me, but it won't work whatsoever for another person. So I just want to go into a little bit of that and then preface that. So I want to talk about anxiety a little bit. This is going to be the final part of this. Anxiety, I'm going to just lay a general definition. Anxiety is essentially fear. And it's a generalized, it can be a fear, and then you have this specific fear, say like you're afraid of heights. And then anxiety, when it gets out of control, it'll go into another type, it'll go like from that specific fear, heights, it'll go to something else, like ladder, you're afraid of ladders. And then it'll just go and just kind of stretch out to very irrational, it turns out like a lot of times not having to do anything with like heights, but just from that strand and things like that, anxiety, that's like one kind of. There's generalized anxiety where you kind of like have just like social phobia is something where you're not afraid of a specific person, but just people in general. It's a generalized discomfort caused from with social phobia. It has to do with rejection and worry, but just kind of like having anxiety because whether people are going to like you or not. So that's kind of like part of like just generalized anxiety, social phobia. It goes to something else with like post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a form of anxiety where that's based on traumatic experiences. A lot of times Army people or people in the service have post-traumatic stress disorder because they've been in combat and they've seen people get killed or they've had to kill. So that's kind of like one type of trauma. But trauma is something that can be it's not very specific. It could be anything. Like you can get trauma, like say, like for me, I had kind of like PTSD from The Wizard of Oz and Dirty Dancing when I was a kid, because my sisters would watch that like 25 times a day, and it's like I got traumatized. I couldn't watch it anymore because it was just always on. So that's like a kind of like a not serious type thing. But in theory, I'm not saying that's peace. I haven't had to go to therapy for that, but it can be something like that too. So it's a very wide ranging spectrum. So I'm probably missing some types of anxiety, but I want to go into things that you can do if you're dealing with anxiety that are generally helpful. Again, this is not going to help every single person, but it may help you. So the first thing that with anxiety to notice, I think it's important to be aware of these things, because if you're not aware of them, then you can't do anything to change them. But the first thing with anxiety in all its forms is it takes control of your breathing, and you stop breathing like you like normally would, and then you have your discomfort, your anxiety, and then you're not breathing like you do it. And so once your brain stops getting oxygen, it's like what happens when I'm trying to think of an example, like when gasoline hits a match. So like when you don't have oxygen with your brain, it's going to cause that anxiety to increase and get out of control and irrational. And again, a lot of anxiety is irrational. Majority of fears that people experience are not rational whatsoever. It's something that, they'll tell you about your fears and they make absolutely no sense. Like, I'll give an example. Like I have this water bottle. If I'm afraid of it, like that's not going to make any sense. Unless like I get hit in the head with it, it's causing me pain and something like that. But that's how irrational like anxiety can be. So I think, the first step to, like one of the main steps to regaining control over anxiety is to breathe, get control over your breathing. It's something that you can, but when your anxiety is out of control, like your brain will tell you that you can't. So, I mean, that's the thing that's very challenging with anxiety too. You have, like, it causes you to be very irrational, but then a lot of the messages you get, like, kind of inspire you to feel trapped. So, it's important to be aware that, like, if you're dealing with anxiety and your breathing's off, you're going to get like some type of messages that are defeating, like maybe like negative self-talk goes into your head and things like that. So again, these are things that, before you try to do anything, it's important to be aware of them. So like once you start to see and understand like that's what's happening, it makes it a lot easier to control or to get under control, and a lot of anxiety, is thought-based too. Thoughts that we have in our head inspire like anxious energy, emotions. So, and those thoughts are not easy. Those are very covered and hidden. So they're very difficult to locate and identify. So, I think that's important to work on too, which you would do with a professional therapy. So, and then, there is medications out there that to treat anxiety. My take on them, they don't solve the problem. They kind of just like they kind of, a lot of them enable you to become like addicted to them, habit forming, and that potentially could cause a lot of other problems. People depend on the anxiety medications, but for a majority of anxiety, again, this doesn't work for everybody, but it may work for you. Majority of anxiety, to take control of it, you really have to take control of your breathing first, because it's the first thing that is taken from you with anxiety. And then you have to work with a professional to find out what thoughts are causing that. It's like a hidden, a sniper or something like that's hidden, that's like kind of like sabotaging you. Once you find that and you can confront that, then it's not going to have power over you. But that takes work. They're hidden very deeply with good reason, because most minds are very very intelligent. So it's something that takes a lot of work. But again, these are two basic kind of things that can help. Obviously there's medications out there, but you got to be careful not to get addicted to them, because then that causes a whole range of other problems. But breathing and challenging the thoughts, or identifying the thoughts first, identifying the thoughts that cause the most anxiety. Those are a couple things that are really important to do. Not easy. You got to work on them like anything else. But I'm going to cut this video off. If this is helpful, please let me know. And if not, let me know too, because like I said, I don't know everything there is to know about anxiety, but your input is greatly appreciated. The more that I can know, the more that I can potentially, help everyone. So hope you're having a wonderful Monday. I hope this video worked, and have a great day.